Hello everyone! Welcome back to another video. I am Joe19 and today is yet another political video, this time discussing the political organisation and possible independent third-party candidate of No Labels. This is a political organisation founded by Joe Lieberman, the moderate former Democrat and former vice presidential nominee with Al Gore. It was founded 12 years ago in efforts to promote public unity and bipartisanship among inside the American political system. And recently it began fundraising efforts to run a third-party unity ticket in the 2024 election, hosted by a moderate Democrat and a moderate Republican as president and vice presidential nominees. The candidates are widely speculated to be the Democratic and moderate senator of West Virginia, Joe Manchin, and the former Republican Maryland governor, Larry Hogan. They've stated in the past that they plan to run unless it is apparent that Joe Biden is far ahead of the polls in Donald Trump. Now, as we know, that's not happening, as the latest C-SPAN poll has Donald Trump and Joe Biden tied at 44%, with other candidates different. It is currently speculated that they will announce that they are running and that Joe Manchin and Larry Hogan will be the candidates. So what effect will they have on 2024 and the national election itself? It's widely speculated that as this is a unity ticket, and Donald Trump supporters are usually diehard supporters, and the majority of Republican supporters are willing to support him as well, that this ticket will do very well, but it will split the anti-Trump vote as a result of Joe Biden's unpopularity and the current economic downslide. So basically what I believe that this party will do in 2024 is that it will run a moderate candidate that appeals mainly to independent voters, voters that aren't affiliated with their political party and that will only vote for the candidate by which they feel has the better views and the better solutions to problems. So No Labels basically epitomizes that, and they're running candidates that epitomize that. Moderate voters with moderate views on social issues, not so much fiscal issues. It will likely be a campaign of fiscal responsibility and low spending to try and reduce the national deficit, will appeal to this party. I predict that nationally, this party will probably get around about maybe 0.5% on the national vote. I think it will do better than most third parties, but I also believe that it won't do anything groundbreaking either. It will not be to the severity or to the significance of independent third-party candidates that ran solely on their own persona and their own knowledgeability, such as George Wallace, Ross Perot, or even John Anderson. No Labels is going to be uniquely significant in the 2024 election in splitting the anti-Trump vote and providing the extra margin Republicans need, and particularly Donald Trump needs, in swing states that we discussed in the first video. And you can find the link to that first video where we discussed what could happen in 2024 in the description below. With that said, let's head over to the Political Map Simulator, again, your own Political Map Simulator, and let's try and simulate the effects by which No Labels could have on the national election if they run Joe Manchin and Larry Hogan. So I'll start by discussing the swing states. As you can see, I've turned a few more states into toss-up states, as I believe that these are the states that are going to be most significantly impacted by the campaign. They're also the Nebraska 2nd District, I'm also going to discuss, and there are a few other states that may be more marginalized as a result of this campaign that I'll discuss later on. But let's start off with Arizona. Arizona, as everyone remembers, is a state by which Donald Trump is heavily unpopular. There is a strong anti-Trump sentiment after his denial of the 2020 election, particularly in Arizona and in Georgia. Therefore, I'm going to guess that there's going to be about a 5 to 10, maybe 3 to 5% of former Republican voters who are also disenfranchised with Joe Biden, and probably some independent and Democratic voters going for No Labels, which is enough to split the anti-Trump vote and give that over to the Republicans. Again, very marginal, but still an extra 11 electoral votes for them. It's the same situation in Georgia, in which you have the current governor, Brian Kemp, who did not attempt to overturn the election results and certified Georgia's 16 electoral votes, who was very popular and was re-elected with a larger margin in 2022. I also believe that as a result of that, No Labels will be able to flip this to the Republicans, particularly Trump. Also in Wisconsin, a state that is highly seen to be moving toward the Republican Party and leaning toward rural voters, I believe it will do well there. In Michigan, a state that relies heavily on manufacturing, and I'll talk about Pennsylvania as well in this case. We've seen significant gains to the Democrats in Pennsylvania. Michigan relies heavily on manufacturing. Pennsylvania relies heavily on infrastructural investment to create construction jobs and industrial jobs and labour. Therefore, Joe Biden is heavily campaigning on that, and so I believe that they will both stay Democratic despite the splitting of the vote. Now look at what's happened here. The Republicans already have a majority of electoral votes, so they've won. I do believe for the moment that a significant no-labels campaign will turn the election over to Donald Trump if it is a rematch. But now we have some states left. We have 3 states left that I want to speak about that could become more marginal or less so, that could change, or their margins could change as a result of the campaign, particularly Minnesota. To understand why Minnesota could become more marginal, we'll have to look at the record and background of Joe Manchin as a senator and also as a governor of West Virginia, a highly conservative state. One of Joe Manchin's core initiatives in West Virginia was fighting the opioid epidemic that was heavily impacting rural towns. To do this, he provided $600,000 to rural communities to be able to fight this issue. He also expanded broadband connection in West Virginia towards rural communities and provided internet service to towns and small communities. With that in mind, the power of rural voters in Minnesota is growing, and I think that they're going to react favourably to his record in West Virginia. As such, I don't believe that it will swing towards the Republicans, but I do believe that it will become more marginal for the Democrats, and that is a state that should be eyed heavily in the future. In New Hampshire, it's a little bit different, and instead you'll have to look at the vice presidential candidate Larry Hogan. Former governor of Maryland, he was very popular. He won his first election in an upset, and he was re-elected in a landslide. Now, Larry Hogan is widely renowned to have moderate or even progressive social views. He supports the right to abortion, and he supports LGBTQ+ rights broadly. As such, he is favourable to Northerners, especially Northern Republicans, and in New Hampshire especially, a very rural state, also with a Republican governor who's progressive and very popular, Chris Sununu, just been re-elected. I believe that it will become far more marginal than it has been previously, perhaps even as marginal as down to between 1 or 2%. However, perhaps not that much. I'm going to keep it pretty safe for now and say that it will retain Democratic by perhaps 3 to 5%. Now let's move over to Nebraska's 2nd District. I believe that Joe Biden will win it again. I don't believe that, seeing as it's already swung to Democrats and seeing it was won by a fairly comfortable margin, that it will swing towards Republicans as a result of an anti-Trump sentiment that doesn't really exist in Nebraska, at least not significantly. Finally, Nevada. As I spoke about Nevada in the previous video, I speculated that within the next 16 or so years, Nevada's going to be a state that swings more towards Republicans heavily as a result of its growing rural community and also as a result of its current incumbent Republican governor. With that said, again, an anti-Trump sentiment in Nevada isn't so prevalent. I believe that the Democrats will retain Nevada, but by an incredibly slim margin, as slim as it can be. Remember that Joe Biden won it by 3%, which is good, but it was the same margin by which he won Michigan, and Pennsylvania was even more marginal, I believe. So Nevada's going to retain Democratic, but it will still become more marginal. Final 2 states I want to talk about are Ohio and Iowa. I actually believe that Ohio will become less marginal for the Republicans, the same with Iowa. Again, Iowa's a very rural state. It will rely on vast investment of broadband. And again, Joe Biden is attempting this currently on the national front, particularly in the South. But Joe Manchin has a successful and notable record at providing broadband coverage to rural communities, and I think they're going to respond to that. I also don't see how a no-labels and independent and anti-Trump campaign could negatively affect the Republican turnout in a state like Iowa, which is already Republican voting. It's the same with Ohio, except after the train derailment just a few months ago, Biden's unpopularity has completely collapsed in Ohio, and Donald Trump is not too unpopular in Ohio either. Therefore, I believe that the Republican margin will also increase. You could also say that Texas and Florida could swing more towards the Republicans as a result of the split, but I don't believe that it would be so significant as to change their shading, so I'll keep them there for now. And with that, that's it. This is what I believe a significant and prominent no-labels independent third-party campaign will do to the 2024 election, how it will particularly affect it, and particularly affect the anti-Trump sentiment and split vote between Biden voters and Republican voters. I believe that it will be able to throw, at least in some degree, the election to the Republican Party, specifically to Trump, in a state like Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin. So thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and goodbye. Thank you.